Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. And today, as promised in my last video, the Soul trailer reaction, I am going to be ranking all 22 Pixar movies. I definitely took a lot of time to rank these because there's just about many of them as there are Marvel movies. I think it's like a one movie difference with Marvel having 23. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy this, and without further ado, if you guys are new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button so you guys can stay up to date with all of my latest content. So let's get right into it. And in last place, this should come as no surprise, I have Cars 2. With this movie, it really just went in a direction that I don't think any of us really asked for. It tried to explore Mater's side of things. It kind of put Lightning McQueen on like the side burner. He was still in it, and you still had the World Grand Prix and everything. But I feel like what they were trying to do was just make it seem like Mater, like, hey, Mater's important too, when I think we all knew that Mater was already important in this movie. A lot of the way that the story flows and everything just seems like very like, oh, Lightning McQueen just happens to be there for the fun, and I feel like what happened with Mater, it didn't need to be its own movie. I feel like there's not really a big outcome of this movie because at the end of the first movie, we already know that Mater was a big part of Lightning McQueen, and I just don't think it's somewhere they really needed to go down, and that's probably why it's my least favorite Pixar movie. Coming in at number 21, I have The Good Dinosaur. When it comes to this movie, it kind of strikes me as an oddball, and not necessarily in the best way either. Arlo, he doesn't strike me as just, I don't know, like the way he looks in this movie, I don't know. I know it's the Pixar kind of cartoony look and everything, but the way that they have the atmosphere built and everything, a lot of the other dinosaurs and such, they seem like they could have fixed them up just to look a little different. Someone that I do love in this movie, however, is Spot. I think Spot is a great character in this movie. I kind of wanted to see more of him. I wish we would have gotten to see a little bit more of him early on, but he doesn't come until about the second act of this movie, and it's really a movie based around Arlo and then just meeting up with Spot. A lot of the characters that they meet, like Butch, and all the different dinosaurs that they meet along the way, don't really have too much of a personality. They're just kind of there for the sake of moving the story along. It doesn't really feel like they have a big effect on our characters, and I don't really deeply connect with this movie too much. So that's why it comes in at number 21. And at number 20, I have A Bug's Life. When it comes to this movie, it's one of the first ever Pixar movies made right after Toy Story. And when it comes to this movie, I'm not particularly a big fan, mostly because of the way that they build the movie around just being centered around like, oh, it's a movie about bugs. And they just kind of have the whole like, here's your good guy, here's your bad guy. The story doesn't connect with me so much on a level. Like, for example, I think a movie that's done better in this kind of like similar setting, if you guys have ever seen the movie Ant Bully by DreamWorks, that is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think it's a way better version of this concept done. But just A Bug's Life has never really, I've watched it a couple of times with family, friends, even by myself, and I just never can get behind why so many people like it. So that's why it comes in as number 20 on my list. And at number 19, I have Pixar's Brave. This movie isn't necessarily a bad movie. As I kind of get into like the bottom 20, these aren't necessarily bad movies, but it's just kind of hard to rank them considering that there's so many good movies. I was a fan of this movie growing up. I most recently watched it about a week or two ago, and I just don't get the same feeling that I got from it anymore. I don't know if it's just because I'm, getting older and stuff like that, but I like Merida as a character and her, her brothers and everything. It's the other characters that don't do it for me. It just seems a little, it seems very like there needs to be a little bit more story told just besides like, Merida turning her mom into a bear and just I think there needs to be a little bit more development with their family and like having issues because you already see in the beginning that Merida is not the biggest fan of her mom. And that's why she gets turned into the bear and everything. But I think they could have done a bit of a better job just showing off like their family relationship and everything before her mom gets turned into a bear. So that's why it comes in as number 19 on my list. And at number 18, I have Onward, the newest Pixar movie out of the bunch here. With this movie, I went into theaters not expecting it to be better than like Ratatouille or one of the big Pixar movies, but I was skeptical of it because it seemed like a totally new, fresh idea. They weren't really, I can't think of a movie that, they were really copying off of. There was no movie that, was like that made from, Pixar. I was very skeptical and I had very high hopes for it. I will talk about the bad first. Some of the things I don't like about this movie is that I really, really wish they could have gone more into like the world itself, focusing less on like the magic aspect. Like I understand that was the whole concept of like, he was, becoming like his dad, like a wizard. And I also found the ending to be a little dissatisfying. I wish we could have got to see a little bit more of his dad. So that, that would have been nice to see. But most of all, I love the relationship that Ian and Barley, have in this movie, as well as like their mom. The relationship is very well done. That's one of the great things I love about this movie is just the family, and that scene where they get pulled over by the police, and he's talking about how he's like, oh, tell a lie, and he says, I think Barley's a screw up, and it doesn't. And it just shows that he thinks he is a screw up. So I just like a lot of the different elements of this movie in that way. So that's why it comes in as my 18th favorite Pixar movie. And at number 17, I have Cars 3. This movie is kind of, I'm 50-50 with it. Half of me loves the relationship, like the callbacks to kind of how like in the first Cars, Doc Hudson was in Lightning McQueen's position. He used to be this really good racer. He used to be one of the best, and now he was being replaced by a better, faster, newer car. And then in this movie, we get to see, it come full circle. Jackson Storm comes in, shows that he's a newer car. He has all this new tech, all this new stuff for him that Lightning McQueen doesn't have. And it's almost like, in this case, Cruz becomes Lightning McQueen, and then, he sends her into the race to do that. And I just really love that part of the movie. The part I don't like is all the stuff before that, all the stuff that lies in between of like going there. I wish there would have been a little bit, cause I'm not particularly a big fan of Cruz. Like I wish they would have shown more of a backstory, given her a little bit more of a backstory other than just, hey, she's here now. I wish they would have made a callback to like where she had been before, or how she, I just kind of wish she was in a little bit more and how she got introduced to Lightning McQueen. And I know how that happened. I just kind of wish there was more with her. So that's why it comes in as my 17th favorite Pixar movie. Coming in at number 16, we have Toy Story 2. With this movie, it's obviously my least favorite Toy Story movie, as you can already tell by now. What exactly I didn't like about this movie was let's start with what I love about this movie. I love the implication of introducing Jesse, Bullseye, and the Prospector. And I love that they didn't just immediately decide to make all of them good people and make the adults the bad people. For example, Al is a villain, but he's not trying to be a villain. He's just kind of, he is a villain, but he's almost like a villain to Andy. He's not necessarily a villain to the toys. He doesn't treat them like Sid did in the first movie. And I do like that he's not like abusing the toys. One of the biggest things I love about this movie is the scene with Jessie and getting hurt, like after she gets taken from her previous owner Emily. It's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. One of the things I'm not necessarily a fan of is just the journey from when like the crew and Buzz go to saving Woody. I find that part to kind of be very like bland and boring. I think they if they would have made those sequences where they're off to find Woody and everything a little bit more exciting, then it would have excited me just a little bit more. So that's probably why it comes in as my 16th favorite Pixar film. Coming in at number 15, I have The Incredibles 2. One of my favorite things about this movie is the fact that they kind of take the spotlight and shine it on Elastigirl in this movie. Because, and it's kind of like a switcheroo, like where in the first Incredibles, the big spotlight was Mr. Incredible and going behind the scenes and going to the island, and then Elastigirl chasing after him. Whereas in this movie, it's Mr. Incredible with the kids at home, then deciding, hey, you know, something's up, we need to do something. You have Frozone coming in, talking to him, and then they both get hypnotized by the glasses. Also, I love the villain in this movie. I remember going to see it in theaters for the first time. I didn't even see the villain coming at first. I also love the implication of all the other superheroes. I think they're great. Now, here's what I don't like about this movie. It seems a little too similar in plot with the villain. Like, I like the villain as like a villain, but I don't necessarily love like their motives slash like why they're going, because it kind of is like, I just kind of wish the villain was because in the last one it was like, oh, we need to go after supers because they're just bad people, and it was the same as Syndrome. I kind of wish they was just like, I don't like I want to take away from them, or I want, I don't know. I just wished it was a little bit different from what Syndrome wanted, because it seems very similar to what Syndrome wants, and so that's why it comes in as my 15th favorite Pixar film. Coming in at number 14, I have Finding Dory. This was one of the best movie theater experiences I ever had, going to see a Disney movie. I remember going to see this movie on opening night and I was kind of skeptical. From the trailers and everything, I wasn't so sure that I was going to like it. But the way that they paced the movie out, and then like had her meeting, like some of the people had just saw her parents not too long ago, and then following the clams and everything, it was perfect. I love that part of the movie. Some of the parts I didn't like was, I liked some of the parts with Nemo and them trying to get into the aquarium, but it feels like, at least for me, that it needed to be, maybe go a little bit of a different route. It just wasn't my favorite, necessarily my favorite plot for them going in. But I was a big fan of like Dory on the inside meeting all these different people. I can never remember some of the names, but like the sonar whale and Hank. Hank's one of my favorite characters in this movie, so that's why it comes in as my 14th favorite Pixar film. Coming in at number 13, I have Toy Story 4. This movie is a good movie, and I wouldn't say that it's a fantastic or a great movie, but it's a good movie. My biggest complaint with this movie is the introduction of the other characters besides the doll girl that's in the shop. All like the puppet, the guys in the tuxedo, I can never remember their names. A lot of the other toys just don't hit right with me. And that's like my biggest gripe. Other than that, I love the fact that Bo Peep comes back, and I'm glad. I love the intro at the beginning of like it showed her leaving and everything. I think that was a fantastic way to do it. I also love that Bo Peep isn't just like kind of submitting herself to Woody and like what he wants. He's like, hey, come back with us, be a toy again, stuff like that. And she's like, no, I'm okay. I've been doing this for a while now. And I like that. I like that she's just able to kind of like stand up for herself and show, telling, even at the end, Woody ends up joining her and saying, maybe it's time that I, start doing things a little bit differently for myself. And I just really like that part of the movie. I also like in this movie that Woody becomes not like, he understands what it's like not to be a kid's favorite toy. As when he was with Andy, he was always Andy's favorite. Even in Toy Story 3, Andy wanted to keep him in the attic, and it's still, I still felt that, going, and it was like he was getting all of this from Andy, and so I'm glad that they ended up making this movie, and it's definitely one of the, it's one of the greatest Pixar movies that I have seen, but there just happens to be that there are so many other fantastic movies, so that's why it comes in as number 13. Coming in at number 12, I have Monsters University. I know this isn't a big film that a lot of people like. I do happen to like it though. I'm not as big of a fan as like the beginning of this movie. I like when they first meet and they meet Randall. We get to learn how he met Mike, and their history together. I love that part. My favorite part of this movie are the scare games. I feel like those are like what really shine in this movie. Sometimes I even feel like skipping in between the scare games parts, just because they're so interesting. One of my, like, I love the montage where they just have all these different, because I think it's cool and it's very like unique as to like how colleges have like sports games and events and stuff like that. And I just love seeing like all of this in the monster world and what that's like. One of my favorite scenes is when they end up going through the portal, the door, and they end up at that camp with all the people, and they almost get caught. The tone is set perfectly. I just really ended up liking that part of the movie, so that's why it comes in at number 12. Coming in at number 11, I have Toy Story 3. This is one of my favorite Pixar movies. I went to go see this. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't even know that we were going to see this movie until we just kind of stopped at the movie theater and decided that we were going to see Toy Story 3. I was so excited, and I was not disappointed. Lotso as a villain in this movie is fantastic. Not immediately coming, being rejected as a toy, and then, coming back. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it makes perfect sense in how he's trying to run everything. And he takes all the toys like Big Baby and just kind of like making her his henchman. I love it. It's fantastic. I think my only complaint with this movie is the fact of how they handled the daycare, like when they were escaping everything. It was a cool scene. It was just a little far-fetched for all the things they did, but it was still cool to watch nevertheless. And so that is why it comes in as my 11th favorite Pixar film. And at number 10, we have Coco. This is one of the most elegant surprises I have ever been to see a movie in theaters. When first seeing this movie for the first time, for a trailer, I was skeptical. I was like, how are they going to turn a movie about a kid with a guitar? How are they going to make this Pixar? Because it was kind of dark. They were going into like Day of the Dead kind of stuff, and I was like, I don't know how they can really turn this into a kids movie, Pixar kind of style. And somehow they were able to pull it off fantastically. When he sings the "Remember Me" song, it always brings some real emotion whenever I'm watching it with friends or family. When he finds out that Ernesto de la Cruz is a bad guy and that he killed his, I think his great uncle, his great uncle or great uncle or something like that. It's fantastic. I love the story that goes behind it, and then he ends up putting up his picture on the set for where they have the pictures and everything. And I just really like the ending to this movie as well. I think it was very well done. So that is why Coco comes in as my 10th favorite Pixar film. Coming in at number 9, I have Inside Out. I never thought in a million years that Pixar would be able to make a movie about emotions and make it work as well as they do. It has never disappointed me to this day. Every time I watch it, it always brings a few tears to my eyes, especially the part, I always remember the part in particular when Riley comes home, she, about to run away, she comes home and tells her parents that she's not, she doesn't want to live in San Francisco anymore, and that she really misses her home in Minnesota. And then they have all the memories flashing, and it's just perfect because it's really realistic to how it actually works in minds, and I can relate to that movie so much, and just how everything works. And of course you have Bing Bong. Bing Bong's a great side character, and all together it just packs together really nicely. So that's why it comes in as my 9th favorite Pixar film. Coming in as number 8 is The Incredibles. One of my favorite things about this movie that I feel like often gets overlooked, and maybe people don't even realize it, is the era that this movie takes place. Taking place in like the 60s/70s, I think is when it takes place, like 60s/70s-ish. I absolutely love that. I think it is one of the best choices to have, because if it were to take place in modern day, there would be so much tech and stuff like that. But with Syndra, I mean, his tech is advanced, but I would love to see like a movie when they grow up and everything. I think it would be a fantastic movie to see. But nevertheless, I think they do a fantastic job with telling the story and with Mirage and just showing off the superpowers really well in this movie and how they can work. And I think all of like Syndrome as a villain in this movie works amazingly, and I love how they show him in the beginning of the movie, and they don't just bring him in like not having to ever interact with the Incredibles just because they're one of the only superheroes around. It's a specific gripe with them, and he goes after them, and I absolutely love that. So that is why it comes in as my 8th favorite Pixar film. Coming in at number 7, we have the original Monsters, Inc. Mike and Sully are classics, and so is Boo. When I first saw this movie, I was very young. I was about 7 or 8. I barely understood what was going on. But I more recently, I did watch it again. I've watched it over the years many times. But one of my favorite things about this movie is like the prejudice that goes on against humans in this world. They're like, get humans away, and they're so scared of them. And like the way the spider, I'm trying to think of his name. His name's Mr. something they refer to him as, but I'm just gonna call him the Spider Guy. I love him as a villain, and Randall, of course. But I consider the Spider Dude to be a little bit more of a big villain. When he throws out, he's like the demeaning guy. He runs Monsters Incorporated. I just think he's a really good character for this movie. And I love all the little things that they put in this movie, like the restaurant and like just all the different funny moments they have with these monsters in this universe. And so that is why it comes in as my 7th favorite Pixar film. Coming in at number 6, we have Ratatouille, a movie about a rat that is able to cook at a 5-star restaurant, which is one of the weirdest concepts for a children's movie I've ever seen in my life. And somehow, because Pixar works their magic again, they are able to work it out. This movie is fantastic. It never lets me down. Every time I watch it, I always find something new about it that I love. Linguini is a fantastic side character in this movie, and I love the little moments with like the ghost version of Gaston that Remy has. I love all like the cooking scenes where one of my favorite scenes in this whole movie is where he's running around the pot and he's like throwing in the salt and he's throwing in the different things and he like mixes it, gets a whiff, or when he's running out and he takes a whiff, he goes, ready to throw up. I love all of that. And I kind of wish they made a sequel to this movie, but maybe we'll get it one day, but if not, that is okay because the original is still a fantastic movie. So that is why it comes in as my 6th favorite Ratatouille film. Coming in at number 5, we have Finding Nemo. And what's so great about this movie is just all of the different characters in this movie, from Dory to Marlin to Nemo to the sharks and Crush the turtle. I love all of these characters. They're so fantastic. And then you have the whole crew that's in the fish tank with Nemo. And I love all of the little jokes that come from this movie. One of my favorite parts is the initiation of flying through the ring, and they're like, shark bait, ooh ha ha. I love all of that. One of my favorite things is the salmon when they're really close to getting to where Nemo is, and they all like swim in a direction that kind of like makes them look like a big version. They're like making fun of Marlin and everything. And I just love the humor in this movie as well. It's not necessarily targeted just towards younger audiences, but it's just kind of very sarcastic. It has a very sarcastic humor to it. So that's why I love this movie so much and why it comes in as my 5th favorite Pixar film. Coming in at number 4, we have the original Cars. If you would have asked me years ago where I would have put this movie on this list, it would have been way lower, maybe even like 14, 15-ish, somewhere like there. But the more that I watch this movie, the more that I love it. You get to see this Lightning McQueen, and I think what makes this movie so well is you get to see the perspective of how the other cars see Lightning McQueen as, this big race car. He has his big airhead, he doesn't know what's going on. All he knows about life is racing, and he doesn't really know much else. So when he's taken into Radiator Springs, they kind of give him a tough time, but it's for his own self-benefit. And I love all the characters in Radiator Springs. There's not one dull character. But especially I love Doc Hudson, and he's just kind of almost like a father figure to Lightning McQueen. And I just think it really works out well. So that is why it comes in as my fourth favorite Pixar film. And as we enter our top 3 here, don't forget, if you guys want to leave your Pixar rankings down below, I'm always open to discussions down there. And let me know what ranking you guys want to see next. I'll maybe do the Disney Renaissance, like Wreck-It Ralph, stuff like that. Or if you guys want to see something different, let me know, and I will be sure to try and get that out for you guys. And without further ado, we will get into the final 3. And as my third favorite Pixar film, I have Up. The first little prologue of this movie is one of the greatest Pixar shorts I don't necessarily call it a short, it's part of the movie, but it is one of the best parts of any Pixar movie ever. Just plain and simple. It does a perfect job of telling the story of like him and Ellie and really getting that emotion in there, so much so that it sets the tone for the rest of the movie in a matter of minutes. And it's so well done. But going more into the movie, Kevin and Mr. Fredricksen, Carl Fredricksen, Doug, Kevin Russell, all of those are fantastic people. Our main villain is also, amazing. And one of the things that's always bothered me a little bit about this movie, though, it's just a small gripe. When we see Charles Muntz as a young kid, I don't know how young he was. He has to be older than Carl, because Carl was just a little kid when he saw Charles Muntz for the first time. So he had to be like no younger than 25 when he started his expedition. So I'm guessing Carl's maybe in his late 60s, and then Charles Muntz is in maybe his mid 70s, late 70s. But man, does he look good in fight? Not too bad for his late 70s. I could talk about this movie for hours, but that is why Up is my third favorite Pixar film. And as my runner-up, I know it's not many people's pick, but it's just my list. Number 2 is WALL-E. I love this movie. One of the biggest things I love about this movie is not necessarily all the little, details. I love just the big concept of this movie of, by and large, a huge company, taking Earth and making it this I think they even in the original trailer they say 700 years in the future, and saying that Earth has become this garbage site, and they go into Earth and out of outer space and the Exium, and all of that is just a great concept for a movie. What's even better about it is that they make it not so dark, but they if you're an older audience, you can see how dark it really is. But if you're a kid, you just see all the cutesy stuff like WALL-E joking around when they have the bra on his eyes and everything, and he's playing with the ping pong paddle. All that stuff just makes for a really well knit together movie. Whether you're a young kid watching this or an older audience, I think it can be enjoyed just as equally by both audiences, and that's why it comes in as our runner-up. And as my favorite Pixar film, it's the first, and it's still the best to this day, is Toy Story. I absolutely adore this film. It is so good. It is so well done. So well done. In fact, if you guys have checked out my top 10 favorite movies from every year that I've been, or I think of all time, it is in that list. It should be at least. It's fantastic. I love that movie so much. One of the biggest things with that movie is just the animation. Of course, it was the first ever Pixar film made on a computer and everything. However, the music written for this movie, every time I hear it, it just has a way of bringing me back to my childhood, watching it on the old VCR tapes and everything on my my Square TV. It's just, I love watching this movie just because of how much it reminds me of my childhood. And of course, the plot is just as good, going to Pizza Planet and all these different cool locations. As a story altogether, it just works. Obviously, it worked, having it come off with 3 other sequels. It just works really well as a movie. So that is why it is my favorite Pixar film. And if you guys enjoyed my list, be sure to join me, like I said, in the comments down below, leaving your guys' Pixar lists. And with that said, I will see you all in the next video, which I'm not sure what it'll be, but I'm sure you guys will enjoy it nevertheless. Peace.